Hello, this is Robert Stearns. Hey, I want to thank you for tuning in. I really believe that learning is one of the greatest joys in life. And one of the greatest ways to learn is simply to have meaningful conversations, both with those who come from a similar background as yours, as well as those whose background might be very different. So my hope is that as we connect and converse with leaders from all around the world, that we will learn and grow together. If you're new with us, hit the subscribe button and we'll deliver the new episodes to you right away. So wherever you are, on a run, in the car, at the kitchen table with some coffee, welcome to the conversation. And good Thursday evening, everybody. I hope you're doing well. As you can see, we are not in our normal studio. We are up at the mountain, Blue Mountain Christian Retreat, where the Eagles Wings tribe gathers every year. We've been coming here for 20 years, and we've got lots of Eagles Wings partners and families here from all over the region. We're having an incredible time here on Blue Mountain. I encourage you next year. It is a beautiful, fun, inexpensive, refreshing, wonderful, wonderful family vacation. My kids have been raised coming up here, coming to Blue Mountain. So pray that you join in with us. A few quick announcements. If you're getting this and you're in the Blue Mountain area and you're a partner, this Saturday is our Partners Luncheon. You should have received an invitation to that. So please feel free to join us for the Partners Luncheon on Saturday. Just respond and let us know that you're coming. This coming Friday and Saturday, not tomorrow, but next Friday and Saturday, I will be at Resting Place in New Jersey. Go to eagleswings.org under the events tab for all of the information. I'll be speaking Friday night and Saturday morning. That is always a wonderful time at Resting Place. And then also make sure you register for the upcoming Heckler Legacy Society webinar. This is a free webinar. It is packed with incredibly important information that'll be a blessing to you and your family. And so that is September the 15th at 7 p.m. Go to eagleswings.org/legacy for information on the Heckler Legacy Society program. All right, lots going on, and hopefully you can hear and see me okay. We're hitting some Wi-Fi issues up here in the mountain, but we're going to do the best we can. I am very, very thrilled and excited to welcome back to Bishop and the Rabbi, our friend, Rabbi Jason Herman from Congregation Beth Israel, West Side Jewish Center in New York City. He holds a BA in International Studies and a BS in Economics from the University of Pennsylvania. He worked as an investment banker and then made the transition to serving as a rabbi. And he's been with us before, and he was one of our favorites, and we asked if he would come back and agree to be with us again. And he's battling through these technological challenges we've had up here on Blue Mountain. But Rabbi, we are excited to have you with us. Will you help me and join me in welcoming Rabbi Jason Herman? And there he is. We got you. Rabbi, how are you, sir?
I'm great. It's great to be back. It's good to see everyone again.
And we can hear each other, which was the problem before.
That was the problem before, but it's all fixed now. The wonders, if we could fix everything in life just by starting over, that would be...
That's right. That's right. Well, we're thrilled to see you again, Rabbi. Rabbi, as I was going through your bio before we get into the Parsha, sure. I think people would be amazed to hear a little bit. I mean, you have these 2 degrees, one in international studies and one in economics. Neither of those screams, rabbinic career ahead, right? I mean,
correct.
And yet somewhere, you were an investment banker, the high pressure of Wall Street. And somehow you make this shift, you make this transition, and you're now serving as a rabbi. Could you, if you don't mind, if it's not too personal, just walk us through that journey? What was it about the role of investment banker that didn't, continue to captivate your interest, and why and how did you make the shift toward the rabbinate?
Right. Not at all. I'm very happy to share. So it's actually, when I was in investment banking, there are many people who go into investment banking. They think it's a great opportunity to make a lot of money. It's a stepping stone to something else, and they don't really enjoy it. I actually loved investment banking. I thought it was intellectually challenging. I loved the people I was working with. It was a great profession for a while. But I think part of what was happening for me is I would get to the end of the week and we'd be celebrating Shabbat, and I would be sitting around the Shabbat dinner table with my friends, and I would talk about my week. And listening to myself talk about what I did that week, I realized if I kept doing this for a very long time, I wouldn't enjoy it anymore, and I would actually kind of start feeling really depressed if this is what I did with my life. I'm sure it's great for some people. As I said, I enjoyed it, and some people make really meaningful careers out of it. But I realized I was going to need to do something different. I didn't have the immediate impulse. I didn't go quit the next week. But within a few months, my company decided to close their New York City office where I was working. They wanted me to move to Miami. I didn't really want to move to Miami, so I thought it was a perfect opportunity to, move on and do something I'd be interested in. I don't know exactly how I realized that calling, but the second I got that call, I was applying to rabbinical school the next day. And it was very fortuitous, and perhaps, somewhat heaven sent. Our office was actually the 89th floor of Tower 1 of the World Trade Center. And September 11th was actually my second day of rabbinical school. Started on a Monday, and that Tuesday.
Oh my goodness.
So.
Oh my goodness. What a story. Wow. Yeah. That is intense.
So it was very intense to actually see the office go complete. But I mean, they closed the office, so everyone else was gone too. But it was very surreal. And it was also a very strange moment to begin a career in the rabbinate. Even just the education toward it. The world changed that day, as
right.
everyone's aware.
Right. All of a sudden, you're studying all of this in light of of all that had happened. And where did you do your rabbinic work?
So I was at YCT Rabbinical School, which stands for in Hebrew Yeshivat Chovei Torah, which at the time I was there was Uptown Manhattan. It is since the Bronx, New York. But we were there in Manhattan that day.
Wow, incredible!
Yep,
an amazing story. Well, Rabbi, we are today in Matot Masai. That is our parsha. That's the name of the parsha. And again, for our Christian brothers and sisters, for our Christian friends, we divide the books of the Bible by the names of the books and then the chapter and verse. But the divisions within Judaism, the divisions are named. So it's kind of like you have the book of Numbers, but within that you'll have these mini sections that are all named. Rabbi, within the parsha, do you mark verses? Do you number verses within the parsha?
So verses are marked, and actually they're also, if you were looking at Torah scroll, what we call also a parsha, some people call it a parsha, as just a paragraph. There's a paragraph breaks in the Torah that will, sometimes refer to. Those aren't get numbered, but the verses are the verses, and there's clearly, particularly when you're chanting it, there are cantillation notes that sort of indicate the end of the verse. So our verses are the same. It's just that the chapter breaks versus parsha breaks is where you end up with a difference.
Got it. And bring us into Matot Masai, because I know that the parsha is named for a word or a phrase or a concept that is right in the first few words of that section. So what is Matot Masai? Is this a double parsha today?
So actually this is in fact a double parsha. This is actually two parsha. One is Matot and one is Masai. And this also might be, an interesting point to point out, particularly if you're Jerusalem focused. For about the last 14 weeks or so, the Jewish community around the world was reading a different parsha than they were reading in the land of Israel.
Right.
We've actually not been on the same parsha for about 14 weeks. So the reason for that is Jewish holidays outside the land of Israel have an extra day. And
Right.
Passover ended on a Friday in Israel, but we had an extra day that went into Saturday. So which means they went back to their normal, ordinary cycle of parshas. And we had a holiday on Saturday, so we had to wait an extra week. And for about 14 weeks, they were there for a week ahead of us. And we're now finally catching up this week. They'll be reading just Masai because they read Matot last week. We'll be reading Matot Masai together so that next week we'll actually be, quote unquote, back on the same page. And
does this also have something to do with the leap year, because we're in the leap year where there's the 2 Adars? Is that
so? That's part of the leap year. Part of what led to the what day of the week Passover fell. But this could happen potentially in a non-leap year as well. As anytime Passover in Israel would end on a Friday and we would end on a Saturday, would throw it off for the weeks. But I think the more interesting question is there are a number of parshas throughout the year that could be doubled. We actually had several opportunities between Passover and now. Passover was the middle of April. So as I said, about 15 weeks ago, but the end of it was 14 weeks ago. We had several opportunities to double up parshiot and, so to speak, catch up. And we didn't. So why wait all the way until Matot Masai to quote unquote catch up? And the answer actually is that we're not actually catching up. We're not trying to catch up. We're just on our schedule. They're on their schedule. We'll eventually end up together. But, and this is like where it comes into, we're now a period on the Jewish calendar, which in Hebrew is called Bein HaMitzarim, which literally means between the difficult, narrow parts.
Right.
It's a 3-week period between 2 tragic fast days. One is the 17th of Tammuz, which was just a week and a half ago, which commemorates 5 events. The first, actually, that was when Moses smashed the 10 commandments coming down the mountain after seeing the golden calf. The second, the primary one, this is when the Romans laid siege to Jerusalem. There's another one, Zephustimus, who is a Roman general, burnt the Torah. The daily offering in the temple stopped being brought, and they also put up an idol in the sanctuary. 3 weeks later, which will be now in another week and a half because we're right in the middle, is the fast day of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which commemorates the destruction of both the first and the second temple. And within these 3 weeks, we ideally want to read the Parsha of Pinchas, which outside of Israel, we read last week. We want Pinchas to come during the 3 weeks, in part because Pinchas is associated with Elijah the prophet. So there's a sort of comfort in reading about redemption in this difficult period. Israel can't do that. They didn't have Parshas to double up, so it doesn't work. But if you double Matot Masai, which you did this week, then you get the consolation of Pinchas come in the middle of the 3 weeks. So we were able to do that by waiting. They were not. So that's how we ended up this way. But now we're catching up this week, to our brothers and sisters in Israel. They'll just be reading Masai. We'll be reading Matot Masai. And next week we'll all be on the same page again.
So I've never heard anyone explain the 17th of Tammuz. And you've just made that clear for us. So if you can, one more time, you said there's 5 tragic events that marked the 17th of Tammuz.
Absolutely. So I'm happy to I'll go through it again. So the first, historically, that's when Moses came down and saw the golden calf and smashed the 2 tablets of the 10 commandments.
Okay.
That's, the big one that, started it. The
right.
Second was the Romans breached the walls of Jerusalem, and then it took them kind of 3 weeks to move through the city to get to the temple. The third was the daily offering that was brought in the temple stopped being brought. They stopped bringing daily offerings.
And was that because the Romans?
Because there was an advancing army, yeah. So, we just see them as 2 events. Uh, we're now up to 4. Ophustamus, who was a Roman general, burnt a Torah scroll. And the 5th was they put an idol in the temple.
And that was that Antioch Epiphanes? Is that?
That I'm actually, that probably sounds about the right time that would have happened, but that I'm
Okay.
not certain on the exact.
All right. So really, basically, it's Moses with the smashing of the tablets, and then the 4 other events were linked at the same time. Correct. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Got it.
All right. Although probably I wouldn't be surprised that at least because this appeared, these 5 are listed in the Mishnah, and for the Mishnah, the real tragic event that they're focused on is the Roman breach of the walls, coming into the city. That's probably hitting them more home, and that's front and center. But historically worked out that was also the day that Moses broke the tablets. So there's a sort of historical ominous quality to this day.
Yeah. Amazing. No, we're very familiar with the Ben HaMetzarim and Tisha B'Av, but I had not had as much clarity on the 17th of Tammuz. So that is super helpful. All right. So we took a roundabout way. Let's get back.
I'll actually just add, because this actually works out really well. It might be good. So the reason we know the 17th of Tammuz is when Moses smashed the tablets is the Torah was given on the Jewish holiday of Shavuot, which was the 6th of Sivan. And exactly 40 days later comes to the 17th of Tammuz. So Moses was up on the mountain, 40 days comes down on the 17th of Tammuz. He then goes up for another 40 days to ask for forgiveness for the golden calf. And he's going to come down. That'll be Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the new month of Elul. He then goes up for another 40 days to get the second set of tablets that he comes down a second time. That 40 days after now bringing down the second set ends up falling on Yom Kippur. So the holiest day of the year is actually when the forgiveness comes, but also the second set of tablets. So Yom Kippur ends up being, in many ways, the opposite of the 17th of Tammuz. So Yom Kippur is the undoing of the 17th of Tammuz.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. Well, we haven't even gotten started and we're already learning from you. So, so bring us now into this, bring us into Matot and Masai then.
Okay. So Matot and Masai, this is, as you mentioned, the end of the book of Numbers. We've now gone through 40 years in the desert. We're wrapping up. The whole rest of the last part of the Torah is going to be the book of Deuteronomy, which is just Moses' final speech. So really the end of Numbers, we've come right to the edge of going into the land of Israel. And most of these 2 parshiot is going to be focused on that process of going into the land. This is, the final steps. So there's a beginning, which is an introduction all about vows, which are voluntary obligations that we take on. It's sort of put there because we're going to see a vow that is going to be taken as part of the story of the Parsha, which what happens, this is most of the Parsha of Matot, the first of the 2 Parshas, is that 2.5 of the tribes who are sitting there on the eastern side of the Jordan River realize this is great land here. It's great grazing land. We have lots of sheep and cattle. We'd rather stay here than go over to the other side of the river.
And remind us which 2 tribes that was.
That was Reuven and Gad. And then later we're told it's also half of the tribe of Manasseh. So it's 2.5, but at least in the initial presentation, it's 2. And they go to Moses and they said, give us the land here, we're staying. And Moses becomes a bit incensed. He says, all of your brothers are going to have to go over the Jordan River and they're going to fight. And you get to stay here. And also, not only is it that you're not fighting, but you might actually lower morale. You're going to say, hey, they don't want to go. Maybe there's something to be scared of. And you're doing the exact same thing that the 12 spies did. They told people why they should be afraid, not want to go in. And you're doing the same. And they actually responded and they said, no. They said, don't worry. And they said, one thing kind of on the negative, but mostly positive. They said, we're going to build fences to lock in our cattle. We'll build houses for our wives and children. And then we will go fight with our brothers and sisters. And in fact, we will go first. We'll be the pioneers. And once the war is over and they've gotten their land on the west side, then we'll come back here to the east side. So we are not running away from the fight. And they make a vow. They make a promise to do that, which is why the Parsha is introduced with the concept of vows and how that works. But I said there was one little thing that was negative in there. They made one little mistake that Moses corrects them. They said, we're going to build fences for our cattle. So, pen them in, and we'll build houses for our children. And Moses responds, he says, okay, but you messed up the order. First, you build houses for your wives and children, then you can build fences for your cattle. Because it's not wealth that's important, your families are more important. So if you're going to go in and fight, first your houses for your wives and children are much more important, then worry about the cattle. And that was the correction that gets made, but ultimately their promise is accepted, and you wait to the end of the book of Joshua, which is not part of the Torah, but it's the next book in the book of prophets. The book of Joshua ends by telling us that they kept their promise, that they did that in fact before then going back to the east side of the Jordan River. When you get to that's the first parsha. When you get to the second parsha, Masai primarily tells you what are the borders of the land of Israel going to be. Lays out all the borders, a very long section. Who are the now princes? The beginning of the book of Numbers said who are the heads of the tribes, which is when they left Egypt. Now who are the heads of the tribes when they go into the land? But there's just one spot that I little skipped, is it mentions every stop along the journey between Egypt and where they are right now about to cross into the land of Israel. And perhaps a good question to ask is, many of these places we never seen before. Torah doesn't mention something that happened along the way. So why mention all these places suddenly now? So one of my rabbis actually had a very good insight. They said, on a national level, maybe some of these places weren't important. And in fact, that's why he didn't tell us about it before, as they were moving through the desert. But in some of these places, even though the 40 years of the desert wasn't an ideal existence, good things happened to individuals. People got married. People had children. And something, again, might not be particular to the whole people. Someone can remember that place. Yeah, when we stopped there, that's when I got married. We stopped there, that's when I had my first child. And in recounting the whole 40 years, you want to recount all those places because it might be significant to somebody. And we share in all of those life experiences together. The whole journey is part of the journey.
Well, and it's so interesting because this is one of those moments, when the two tribes or the 2.5 tribes that didn't want to cross over, it could have been the beginning of the loss of the Jewish people. It could have been the beginning of the disintegration, right? The disintegration of the 12 tribes. And so they had to work together to find a way to balance out the individual choice and agency and decision of those tribes with keeping overall tribal cohesion connected.
Right. And that's a good way to connect those the two parts of the Parsha. Exactly. So.
And I would just say that to me, that is, I've never thought of this till right now, and that's why we do these studies, because hopefully you're thinking new thoughts. But to me, if I had to describe the genius and the strength of the Jewish people, it is that right there. It's manifest in that story. What do I mean? Well, you couldn't find more opposite mindsets and worldviews than, say, the Orthodox community, the ultra-Orthodox community, etc., and the Reform community, right? or even those who are just simply basically secular or just, mildly observant. And yet both of those communities would absolutely affirm the Jewishness of the other.
Right.
Even though they are theologically disparate, they are they have tremendous theological divide between them. Neither one would cancel the Jewishness of the other. My good friend Giddy Grinstein wrote the book Flexigidity, which describes why the Jewish people are still here. This ability to fuse together flexibility and rigidity within one people. And this may be the earliest indication of that within the Jewish people. How do we stay united as a tribe, but allow for divergence of opinions and pathways? Am I onto something there, Rabbi?
I think you're onto it. And I think it actually even gets supported when you look at the book of Joshua and see what happens next. So after they fulfilled their promise, they conquer the land. So now these 2.5 tribes are going back. And what they did is they built a monument right smack in the middle of the Jordan River. And the other 9.5 tribes suddenly, 10.5. How's the math? 9.5 tribes. 9.5 tribes get really incensed because they thought you're building this monument as sort of a new place of worship and you're disconnecting from the rest of us. And they almost went to war over it. And they approached them really hostilely. How could you do this? Why would you build an altar here in the middle of the Jordan River when your place of worship ultimately should be with us? And the 2.5 tribes responded. They said, no. They said, that's not why we built this. We built this, and it's out of rock, so talk about the rigidity, to remind ourselves that even though we're living over there, we're still part of you over here. That we would, every time we would see that monument, it tells us that even though we're there, we also belong to what's happening on the other side of the Jordan River. That we might be in a different place. We might, maybe the metaphor goes, we might be in a different place theologically. We might be in a different place ideologically, but we still see ourselves as one people. And in the course of this journey, Masai mentions the journey, we started as a people. We started as a nation that left Egypt. Something that we did together happened to us together, all descendant of a family. And that happens even before there was a Torah that was given and a mission for us to understand theologically what we were about or have religious views. So first you're people, then you have the religious views that you're going to fight and debate over. But you start as a people.
Well, I think it's fascinating. And, for my Christian brothers and sisters, I think this is the great weakness of the Christian church. We are far too quick to literally cancel the Christianness of each other when we find ourselves in different places theologically or politically. My dear friend Mark Gerson, who teaches with us on Torah Tuesdays, as he began to walk closely alongside the evangelical community and the greater Christian community, it was one of his first observations. He said to me, Robert, he said, you don't really all function as one people. And I am jealous of the strength of the Jewish people in that ability to affirm and strengthen the Jewishness of the other, even if you're in totally different camps or totally different backgrounds. And it's one of the things that I pray that through studies like this and through what we do and through the increasing interaction of our communities, I'm praying that that's one of the benefits that come to the Christian community.
I would pray that for you as well. I think it's a great hope and vision. And I think one of the metaphors that I think always worked for us, and I think we all experience, is that It's ultimately it's family. Think about, how many people you have, a brother, a sister, an uncle, a cousin who you're diametrically opposed to, and yet they're still around your Thanksgiving table. At least we hope. And
Right.
no one cancels. You don't get canceled out of the family. Maybe in the worst case, you don't talk to a member of the family, but they're still always family.
Yeah.
And that can't be undone. And I think that's sort of the way we think of the Jewish people. Is we think of the Jewish people as my family. And it's family. Same way you have those same disagreements in family, you have that in among the people.
Rabbi, I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm trying to think in the Torah. I mean, obviously you have the laws. If there's a leper or someone is ritually unclean, they need to be put outside the camp for 7 days or whatever it would be. And then there's punishment for crimes, murder or whatever. But is there within the Torah an actual exclusion of people from the Jewish people? And what would it take for that to happen? Is that within the Mosaic law that someone can be literally expunged from the house of Israel?
So the Torah actually does have a punishment, which it calls karet, which means cutting off. The rabbis actually debate what that means. One of them actually means you might be, at least in a spiritual sense, God will be cutting you off from the Jewish people. And it's worth noting, the Talmud actually has an entire tractate to that topic. Lists 39 sins that would lead to that particular punishment. And I think what's actually, perhaps, worth thinking about those particular sins, most of them are negative commandments, the commandments of don't do this. Usually a positive commandment, blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, eat matzah. Positive commandments usually don't have punishments. You just sort of lose out by not doing them. There are two positive commandments that if you don't do them, the Torah says do it. If you don't do it, you receive this punishment, which is the punishment of karet, of being cut off of the Jewish people.
Wow, this is big. What are they?
So the first is circumcision. If you don't get circumcised, theoretically you should have been circumcised when you're 8 days old. But if that didn't happen, then you are obligated to get yourself circumcised later on. The second, at least when the temple was standing, was the Passover offering. So what is it about these two that just not doing these two? And they're the only two. They're the only two positive commandments that the Torah prescribes a punishment for, and that punishment is you would be cut off. But if you think about it, circumcision from the time that Abraham did it was the mark of Jewishness for him. If somebody is refusing to get circumcised, what are they saying? They're effectively saying, I don't want to be Jewish. I don't want to be part of the Jewish people. So in terms of this punishment of karet, they're almost doing it to themselves.
Right.
And then the same thing happens with the Passover offering. The Passover offering is saying, I was part of this people that left Egypt. It's a mark of identity. And it's saying, I'm not going to do this. It's again the same thing. It's saying, I didn't leave Egypt. I wasn't part of this people that left Egypt. So you're effectively already giving yourself the punishment by cutting yourself off from it. So then you can look at the negative. The negative is really somebody perhaps who's just acting in just such a way, at least in the time that the Torah was given, in ways so that it's just so anathema to how Jewish people were supposed to act that you're not part of the people anymore. What you effectively really done is you've cut yourself off as opposed to as much as a punishment.
Yeah,
Later
I mean,
it's
more a recognition that you yourself have done this.
Correct.
That's. But in the Passover offering being that is fascinating. Mm-hmm. And so those are the two instances. What is the word again, Rabbi, for that cutting off?
The word is karet, which literally means to cut off. Or to
karet with a chet?
With a kaf.
Kaf. Karet. Interesting. Wow. Incredible. Folks, I'm telling you what, the Bible study is a never-ending, fascinating journey into so much. I mean, it just is incredible that when we study the Word of God, it becomes a doorway, it becomes a window, it becomes just an invitation to understand life at such deeper levels. And we're so blessed to have incredible guides like Rabbi Jason Herman, who take their time and just spends valuable time teaching our community. Rabbi, we've been so encouraged just in the past 3 months, I think it is. We've had over 5,000 new people join these studies. They're either joining live or they're downloading them on the podcasts after, or going back and rewatching, re-listening. It's been incredible to see the growth of this, not only across America, but around the world.
Congratulations.
Rabbi, go ahead.
Thank you. No, congratulations. It's really just, I applaud you on that growth. And that's something we're envious of. I would love 5,000 new members in 3 months.
Yeah, but you have to prorate it because you've only got, got 14 million. So for you, 5,000
exactly.
might be 17. That might work out, the ratio. Right. Rabbi, our time always slips away from us. We have just a few minutes before we need to sign off. Take us through whatever final commentary, whatever final focus we should kind of extract from this Matot study tonight. Again, if you've been following along, it's Numbers 30 to Numbers 36. Okay, that's the passage. Numbers 30 through Numbers 36. So just take us into any final thoughts, Rabbi, before we need to sign off.
I would say, that we're all on a journey. We're on a journey together. And every stop of the journey, no matter how significant or insignificant you think it is significant. And just note every stop along the way and, take the time to, note it. I guess is the final, way to position is that Rashi, the famous commentator par excellence, mentions, he says, for the Jewish people, every time they got to a stop in the desert, they were already waiting for just like, when do we break down camp, move on to the next stop, because we're trying to get to the promised land. But God, every time they broke down camp, it was really just a step to the next stop, because each stop had its own importance and significance. So it's not just the destination, but all the stops of the journey are important for us to celebrate and note along the way.
It's so good. It is so important and so vital. And Rabbi, you have been a blessing to us. Remind me again, where exactly is your congregation?
So we are in the Hudson Yards district, which we're also rebranding as the Hudson Yards Synagogue. It is in Midtown Manhattan on 34th Street, just near 9th Avenue.
Got it.
So anyone while you're in New York City, welcome to come visit. We'd love to see you.
And just briefly, what is the International Rabbinic Fellowship?
Because the International Rabbinic Fellowship, which is my side job, but side jobs always have a way of becoming well, second jobs, is a organization of almost 300 Orthodox rabbis and clergy and others, serving in the Orthodox community around the world, mostly North America, but in Israel and Europe. We used to have Asia and Australia as well.
And what particularly binds that group together?
I think it's, first of all, they're all Orthodox, but it's Orthodox clergy that also see them serving the larger Jewish people and the larger world, and are, trying to come up with ideas that we recognize that Orthodoxy has certain strengths. It's within the denominations in Judaism, it's doing remarkably well, but also want it to be that Orthodoxy can serve even non-Orthodox people, and that Orthodoxy can benefit.
We're right back to the
in the middle of
the tribes.
And it doesn't even have to be like Jews. That all of the strength that Orthodoxy brings can benefit others, even outside the Orthodox community or even outside the Jewish community, and that we're happy to try and collaborate together. That's the idea of these 300 clergy members collaborating together in ways that we could serve beyond just our denominational boundaries.
That's beautiful. Hine matovu minayim shevet achim gam yachad, right?
Amen. Excellent.
So wherever we can build bridges of unity and fellowship, that's something that Hashem commends and releases a blessing upon. There's there's a bracha that comes when we walk in that unity. Rabbi, we're so grateful you persevered through our challenging technological glitches, and we're very, very grateful that you did. And I do hope that we can visit together in person soon. Thank you so much, sincerely.
It was really great to be back, and thank you for the invitation again. It's really a pleasure.
We hope to see you again in the future. All the best, and everybody, thanks for tuning in from Blue Mountain. And remember, keep praying and working for the peace of Jerusalem.